mercifully short anyway. I don't really have much. I don't have any. I've got nothing for you this morning, actually, other than to say we've got some. Obviously, we had some great sessions yesterday. We've got some other, I think, more sort of granular pieces this time round. We're going to begin with some piece on healthy cities, neighbourhoods, social prescribing, marginalised communities, climate resilience. We're going to do some wellness exercise. We've got a piece in grief this afternoon, a connection over the lifespan. So a thing on youth. I mean, we've got just like tons of really great content. So we want to kind of move along at a fair clip here. But before we begin the day, I'm going to invite John Coburn to join us to say a few words. John Coburn's an artist who's does a lot of art. He did some pen and ink drawings, and I'm in one of them. And for some reason, he put me in a tweed jacket. I just don't understand what that was. It was nice. It was nice, but I just I don't know quite what my tweed jacket represents. So, John, you're going to share a few thoughts for us. Thank you, sir.
Got great bow ties.
That's right. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I do. Thanks, Peter Bambacci. Let's give this guy a warm round of applause. And again, to all the people that shared words up here yesterday, it was a fantastic day. So I will check my notes here. Yeah, okay. I'll just fly here. Drawing. Appreciated your comments. And I shared with a few of you that many over 40 years of drawing basically on location, which usually means on the street. The most common thing I hear people say is, I wish, they stop, they compliment the drawing, and then they say, I wish I could draw, I wish I could be creative. And I say, well, I can teach you how to draw in 5 minutes. That's another workshop. But what I do have to say about that is very clear after sharing a little bit of creativity with people over the years, is that if we stop for 5 minutes, or God forbid 15 minutes, and we just sit quietly, maybe alone, maybe in the kitchen, but just be quiet. Pick up a pencil, pick up a pen, stare at the blank sheet of paper, write your 3-minute poem that you've always dreamt of, that's been sitting inside the mind, write the novel, write the lyric, pick up a bigger brush, go out and paint the bench, paint the garage, but get outside, get out and do something with these things. And as this man says, get off your phone. And that physical activity connects really nicely, I find, with the mind.
I'm just going to pull up your piece that you did for us 4 years ago, because I think you could even speak to that in what you are talking about now. Do you want to speak to that?
I would love to. If only I had this part planned. No. Again, working on location, the beauty of it, Monet used to say, he was asked to give a lecture in front of some U.S. graduating artists at a university, and he said, I really only have 3 words to say: nature, nature, and nature. Meaning, get outside, stare at the object, put your pen to paper, and go. Because that connection that you have with what's in front of you is a meditative, magic moment. And so the drawing here represents the people on the street and this man's doorway to the Emerald City called the Bambacci Brick Road. Then finally, almost, I was in college, and so here's what happened yesterday. I'm thinking, all my life, my adult life, I've thought of myself as, or my friends tell me I'm an extrovert. I'm an artist. I'm also an actor, which means, I guess I have to be confident in front of a bunch of people and pretend that I am confident. But after listening yesterday to these ideas, I realize I have not been like that all my life at all. And still am not, as we all know. And so what happened was, yes, I can sell airplanes, vacuum cleaners, art, all this confidence, right? But it wasn't like that when in my early days. I was very shy. School dance, leaning against the wall. Teacher walks by and says, "Are you having a good time, John?" Holding up the wall. You know, all that stuff that hurts a bit when you're young because you don't know how to respond to it. Finally, I'm at my third year of art college. I'm outside. It's like a beautiful fall day like this with gorgeous trees outside. And this teacher walked up to me and said, "Just a second, John. I see you doing this. I see you laughing. I see you sculpting. I see you painting. But I just want to let you know that you are actually an artist." And in a split second, she changed my life because she gave me permission to live my dream and believe that. And this is what this guy and all of us here are discovering we can share day to day with people, giving people permission, tapping them on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, you're okay, you're cool." And the last thing, honestly, is I went to Europe for 2 years, traveling, mostly in London and Paris, working. Got to Morocco, spent 3 months, and one day I was feeling very alone. I was walking down some old road alone, and I ran into this old man, and he said he could see I was not happy. And so he talked about that, talked about loneliness. And he said, there's a great, I'm sure many of you know the Indian philosopher Krishnamurti? Krishnamurti? I know you do. You do. The guy said, if you think about loneliness and you go into your mind and think about that feeling or the depressing feel, if you look just around the corner from that, that's gold. That's where the peace is. And so yesterday, when Peter suggested I share a few words, I went back after over 45 years, probably 50, and I looked up the quote, couldn't find it, but I found a 40-second clip of the man himself in his 80s, Krishnamurti, and this is what he said. And this is 30 seconds. Loneliness. Remain with loneliness. The word alone means all one. Do all of you know that? Have you heard that? The word alone means all one, all in one. Where in loneliness, I'll start again. The word alone means all one. Where is loneliness? Sorry, Krishnamurti. Where is loneliness is complete isolation from everything. Haven't you felt this? All human beings go through this feeling, this sense of complete isolation in which there's no relationship with anything. You're completely lost. But with that loss feeling, we never remain with it. We never remain with it. We don't go into it. We don't try to deal with it, but instead run away from it. But try to look at loneliness and not move away from it. You know, when you're having great pleasure, you don't want to move away from it. You want to stay with it. You want to live with it. And so in the same way, let's try staying with that loneliness. That feeling of loneliness has a tremendous meaning to our lives, and if we surrender to it and stay with it, it will wither and flower. Thank you.
So we'll move on with our opening session, which is going on healthy cities, neighbourhoods, and home. The moderator for this is Heather Keem from Tamarack, who I've been trying really hard to upset this morning and haven't succeeded yet. But I love a challenge, so I'm not going to give up. And we've got two researchers doing work in this area. There's Robin Lee, who's a student researcher at the Hey Neighbour Collective. You're here, Robin, yes? And also Tanisha Joseph of 880 Cities. You're both here, so if you both want to come up and share some of your work, and then Heather can interrogate you after that. Are you going to make your way up here?
I see. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Robin. I'm a graduate student at Simon Fraser University in the Urban Studies program. And I've been a research assistant with Hey Neighbour Collective, or HNC, as I'm going to continue referring to, for the past couple of years. Today, I'm going to present on a focus group research project on community housing that took place in Vancouver on unceded traditional territories of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. And I think it's always important to remember that research on housing, land use planning is taking place on stolen land, where colonization continues to sever people's connection to their homeland and their right to adequate housing. And I'm lucky to share this work with you today on Treaty 13 territory. So a little bit about HNC. So as many of us experienced or observed during the pandemic, private homes have become a primary site of isolation, leading many of us to revisit questions like, what are people willing to share with or do for one another, especially in times of crisis? And kind of the main motivation for HNC's research is this question of what would it take for us to consider neighbors as an important source of support or connection. This is an example of the past 2 years of our resident survey results, where we found around 2/3 of respondents said that they would like to get to know their neighbors better. And so this focus group project was kind of a follow-up discussion. We wanted to hear more about people's relationships with their neighbors in the building. When it comes to neighboring research, for the most part, research tends to frame solo households or community housing tenure households to be more uninterested, unavailable, or even face difficulties with positive forms of neighboring, especially when compared to homeowners. And actually, the positive social dynamics of community housing buildings are relatively unexplored, often treated like a nuisance. And we believe that this project offers something different and valuable since it aims to highlight the very complicated social context of multi-unit community housing buildings. The actual project took place in April last year, and we conducted 5 90-minute focus groups with about 22 residents from these 4 different community housing providers. And the discussion centered around this question of what's the role that neighbors play in your life, and other kind of factors that impact their relationships. So we believe that a home is more than just a physical shelter. There are routines to maintain, share, and otherwise live in your space that create the material and or imaginary characteristics of home. And so our framework is based off the understanding that neighboring is very much a part of this work of homemaking, because the interactions you have with your neighbors can become part of the everyday routines that affect how people use and feel about their home. And so this spectrum of neighboring or scale helps to demonstrate the more kind of pro-social ways people interact with their neighbors, ranging from maybe casual greetings to someone that is really more of a community champion. But we are also interested in a more nuanced understanding of neighboring. What about kind of the inverse side of the spectrum? As much as neighbors can help make your home feel more comfortable, safe, and secure, they can also be part of processes that unmake your home and kind of create barriers to that. So our findings summarize how neighbors are part of people's apartment life, ranging from social to antisocial forms of neighboring. And it's important to consider that these are not static. Someone can be both neighboring in a social way and antisocial way at the same time. And antisocial here doesn't mean just being against socializing, but more actively interfering in opportunities for social connection, such as instigating conflict, for example. So I won't be reading out every quote, but I'll just draw our attention to one per slide. So for example, when discussing about opportunities to meet neighbors and even just have small talk with them, a lot of people expressed interest in doing shared community activities, some of which got shut down during COVID. But one participant actually blamed the kind of apartment layout, which is the final quote here. So she says, "In apartment living, there is no activity in the hallways, it's just a hallway and doors. There's no activity, there's no common yard." Whereas actually for others, the apartment layout has benefits for social opportunity. For example, saying hi to your neighbors in the elevator. Here's the second quote. Neighboring from distance, this refers to kind of this more gray area of asocial neighboring. And I think what's important to highlight here is that a significant number of participants in our focus groups cited the value for emergency help. So in times of crisis as the main motivation or reason for wanting to get to know their neighbors in the first place. And so even though getting to know your neighbors might come with some risks, for example, the second quote, when someone says, "Don't know what I'd be getting myself into," the importance of having an emergency contact in your building was a very strong theme in our conversations. And I want to highlight this last quote, where it's a conversation between two people, where someone recalled that the only reason that they found one of their neighbors is because he had friends outside the building. They were the ones who called, nobody actually inside the building. Someone just below me, she collapsed. She was on her floor for a day before somebody found her, and she was covered with bed bugs. Nobody knew about it until the place was infested, and the bed bugs traveled through conduits. They came up with dog, checked out my apartment. So if there was a flyer on my neighbor's door that had been there for 4 days, I would check on your door, and the same with anybody else. And someone else responded in the group and said, "But there's a lot of people in the building who wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't do that." So I think this also is important to highlight, as neighbors' presence can be felt in our home spaces via unwanted guests, like bed bugs, unwanted smells, and noises. And there's different limits to what people are willing to do for one another. We also found that through our discussions, good neighbor status depends on this ability to refrain from imposing an excessive or unwanted amount of sharing on your fellow neighbors, including infringements on proximity, noise, odors, personal privacy. And respecting these rules and kind of keeping to this neighboring culture can be what differentiates social connection from interference. And interference, we found, can unfortunately escalate quite quickly. These are just a couple of quotes or examples of conflict between neighbors and cases particularly where shared spaces or proximity with one another was not a point of connection, but actually conflict. And in this way, we argue that neighbors can just as easily unmake your home, perhaps more easily than they can actually make it. So we have tried to portray a more complicated and nuanced understanding of the ways that we neighbor with one another. And as cities really increase in size, diversity, and are looking to grow or build vertically, multi-unit residential buildings are really at the center of this future development. And it's important to understand that although neighbors constitute weaker ties than friends and family, they're nonetheless essential and currently poorly understood, especially in the context of multi-unit residential buildings, and especially in the context of community housing. And so we hope that this research highlights the need for urban, social, and housing policy that addresses neighboring in ways that are contextualized appropriately, with the lived experiences of residents as an important part of social inclusion and well-being when we are planning with increasing diversity and density in mind. And these last two pictures, the one on the left is an article from a local news outlet. Why is Vancouver so lonely? So our concern really, we hear this often, is that as Vancouver really becomes an increasingly unaffordable city, the challenges of living here for some might override the ability for us to have complex conversations and connect over a collective solution to our individual problems. And so in this article, this journalist asked, if life is too fragile for us to support ourselves, how can we possibly support each other? And in many cases, it leaves people with a limited capacity to connect, or they leave the city altogether. And so it seems to us that current realities are very challenging, or at the very least, there's no perceived benefits to promoting social connectedness. However, we can't ignore the negative realities of community and affordable housing, including the risks of neighboring, as we run far greater risks without these complicated conversations. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanisha Joseph, and I am the project coordinator at 880 Cities. And today I will be talking to you about the power of placemaking as a social connector. So briefly, a little bit about 880 Cities. At 880 Cities, our mission is to ignite action and challenge the status quo to create healthier, more equitable, and sustainable cities for all people. 880 Cities is based right here in the city of Toronto, but we do work in communities across the world. And what we do really well is bring people together to transform mobility and public space. We are guided by the simple but powerful idea that if everything that we did in our cities was great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, then we'd be creating cities that are better for all people. And today, I'm going to discuss a little bit about what placemaking is, culturally responsive placemaking, and how that can help marginalized communities feel more at home within their community's public spaces, and how we can foster community and a sense of belonging within our public spaces based on how we design them. Okay, so briefly, what is placemaking? So the Project for Public Spaces defines placemaking as a collaborative process by which we can shape our public spaces to maximize the shared value that they provide for us. So at its core, placemaking is really about deepening the connection between people and the places that they share. And it occurs when communities have the power, capacity, and resources to change their public spaces so that they acknowledge their needs and also make the spaces better for their everyday lives. So in terms of how placemaking can benefit our social health, what placemaking really does is maximize the use of a space for community members, and it brings them together to linger and gather and foster those connections that are so important to building community and promoting inclusion and belonging along the way. So I'm going to be discussing 2 placemaking projects that 880 Cities has undertaken in the past few years to improve the social connectedness of neighborhoods. So the first project I want to talk about is Activate Downtown Brampton. So the goal of this project was to attract people to the city's downtown and to also create more opportunities for social connection. So this is Vivian Lane. This is an underused laneway within the city of Brampton. So as you can see, not a lot going on, pretty dead, not a lot of activities. So this is before our activation. And this is what Vivian Lane looks like now. So as you can see, it's definitely more playful and vibrant and fun. And it became a site where communities can come together and hold events and pop-up markets and even yoga. It really brought the community together and fostered a sense of belonging for everyone there. As many of our projects start at 880 Cities, we really take it to the streets and go meet communities where they're at to figure out what they would like to see within their public spaces. So that's exactly what we did with this project. We went to the community and asked them what they wanted to see in downtown Brampton and what they wanted to do within their public spaces. So with that, we heard that they wanted free activities for all ages, that they wanted more pop-up markets and opportunities for shopping, culturally diverse art and entertainment, health and wellness activities like yoga, as well as community and learning. So that's exactly what we did. So for over the span of a few months, there was a variety of different events within Brampton's downtown that were really responsive to the different, to how culturally diverse Brampton is. So there was culturally responsive food and music and art, and it really made people feel at home within the spaces in their community, which meant that they were more likely to visit these spaces and stay there and linger and connect with one another. Okay, so impact by the numbers. So these are pretty large numbers, of course, because prior to what was going on in that space was pretty much nothing. So what we see is that during the weekend, there was a 242% increase in activity within the laneway. So activities such as sitting, taking pictures, eating, as well as more movement through the lane as well. So people were moving in and out of the space more and staying within the space longer than they were before, which means that there were greater opportunities for people to sit and talk and connect with their community members. And then how did the space change people's perception of the space? So after the transformation, people felt more comfortable and more safe and social and playful. Comfort and safety are very important factors for marginalized communities, especially to feel more comfortable and at home within the spaces within their community. So that was a very important thing, and the fact that it did increase is great to see, of course. The next project I want to talk about is a project we did in the city of Kitchener. So this was a collaboration between ADD Cities and the City of Kitchener Parks and Recreation Department. So this is what the site looked like before. It was just a street. So of course, people are just moving in and out, cars moving as well. Not a lot of opportunities for people to connect. The purpose of this project was to explore different ways that the community wanted to reimagine parks and public spaces within their neighborhood. And we arrived at the idea to have a pop-up park. So in front of the city's hall, we completely blocked off the street there and turned it into a pocket park. So this is what it looks like now. More opportunities for play. There are also opportunities for people to gather. It wasn't just for kids, but also for their parents as well. Everyone had an opportunity to play here. So some key programming themes for this project was that it was culturally responsive. So the programming in the park was culturally recognizable to the Indigenous and South Asian folks that were in the community. There was also a range of programming that provided a sense of belonging and stewardship for all visitors. So really important for the pop-up park was creating spaces for people to gather. So we had additional seating, and there was a movie night, also places for play as well. And also a campfire, which brought people in the community together to roast marshmallows, which is always great. I think we all would love a great community campfire here. Really bring us together, and they talked around the campfire and shared stories, and it was really a great thing to see how just little things like adding a campfire within a space can really bring people together. So 64% of the visitors who went to the park said that they met someone new, which is great. I think that is a great indicator of a good public space, because it means that it increases the chances of people connecting with each other. And then also 93% of people said that their interests were reflected in the pop-up park, which means that everyone felt a sense of belonging as well. Okay, so how do we create public spaces that bring us closer together. It's really about fostering community and a sense of belonging within public spaces. So that means listening to the community's needs, especially those who have been traditionally underrepresented in the placemaking sector. Having something for everyone. Having something for everyone within a space means that we can maximize the shared value for everyone, that everyone can come there and see something that they like, that they want to do, and that they feel reflected from. So that means culturally responsive programming, food, art, as well as age-friendly design as well. Having multiple things happening at once, giving more people more reasons to stay within a space, and that's something that was displayed with the projects before. There were so many things to do. You could play, you could sit and watch a movie, you could visit a market. And then also is getting the community involved in testing out the ideas of well, which helps foster stewardship of the space and ensures that once we try to make these were temporary projects, and once we try to make these projects more permanent, the community is already supportive of these ideas. And that's all I have for today.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for these presentations. Before I want to start, I just want to talk about art. I heard a quote yesterday, or on Monday when I was at a conference, and I think it's brilliant. Magicians make things disappear. Artists make things appear. Isn't that beautiful? And as you can see from the presentations, art makes things appear. Makes people appear, makes colors appear, makes it appear more inviting and natural. So I just wanted to start off with that. So the two presentations, and I actually really like the order of the presentations, because the first presentation was really about the people and the mindset that they're in their communities. And some of the challenges that they have when they're in a community. And then the next presentation was really, I actually think, the solution to the problems that the people in the community of the first one, right? And that the solutions really the people. I have a saying that people are the hero to crises, not programs, not activities. And so the people have the solutions to solve their own problems. And it's actually having the conversations and listening to them and organizing them together. The other thing, too, is I'd like to rename this session, because we put cities first. And I'm a country gal, so where's towns? So I'm renaming this session to Neighbors that Build Neighborhoods that build towns and cities, because the neighbors are the most important people in this equation. So we're on the question and answer time. How much time do we have?
I've got
7 minutes. Get it in early and often. So does anyone have any questions for the group?
Just quickly, the 8 to 80 projects, what you guys are doing is really great. And I noticed with your first one, as I was looking really closely at what already existed, you already had seating, you already had some plants in there, and you had those lights. And those are kind of the three core elements of placemaking, and that clearly did not work. Yeah. All I could see that you added was flowers and the street mural. Was that was it for your installation?
Yes, it was the ground mural, as well as additional seating that was movable. So
yeah.
It was more, what's the word? It created more opportunities for people to rearrange their spaces to fit the the size of their groups.
Yeah, because those chessboards are on those tables; those were permanent. But did you also program the space at all?
Yeah, we also programmed the space. So I don't know if it was clearly shown in the photo, but throughout that project, it was months of programming. So we had different events within the space. Like there was family day, so there was games and family fun. There was also pop-up markets, night markets, food festivals, dance parties, everything you can think of to keep people within a space and maximize the shared value that they all had.
So ideally, like you added a few touches to it, but you actually, people brought people in.
Yeah, it was.
And you got used to using the space.
Exactly, absolutely. It was really about asking the community what they wanted to see and what they wanted to do, and then delivering on it, which means that they, had a better chance of visiting that space day after day because they actually saw things that they wanted to do. So that really kept them in the space and made them linger longer and connect with people. So it was really about the people. Yeah.
That's a great question, and I think the other aspect of that is the listening.
Yes.
And convening. So yes, you had the three elements of building a community, of building a place, but I think one of the elements in the beginning part was it was done for them, not done with and by, right? So I think that's the element.
Yeah,
It was just done, and then hopefully, what is it? You build it and hope they come, right? And so I think that's an element that you brought in. Another question.
Okay, this is also just so interesting and exciting. What I'd like to ask Tanisha, did I pronounce it right? See, I always ask. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Was it challenging to have these projects funded? And are there community partners that could step up?
So
That's my, and then
for these projects, so for the Downtown Brampton project, that was funded by a federal grant called the Main Street Activator Program, which basically gives funding to help activate public spaces within Canada. I would say it's not that it's hard to necessarily find funding for these. I think that with projects like that, it's very, the impact is very known. So I think that for us, it's really just capturing the impact that the projects have had and just using that as a way to advocate for ourselves and advocate for communities to have a more deeper place in how we plan public spaces.
So I got actually a question for Robin. In your research, and because you did a lot of listening and understanding, did the residents come up with some solutions, some ideas in your research?
Yes. Do you mean solutions to getting to know each other more?
Yes, because
Yeah.
you talked about some of the talent, like I wouldn't knock on their door, we don't like each other, but did they come
Yeah.
up with some ways or ideas?
Yeah, so there was, I think one quote up there that I didn't read out. There was one person who said anytime that he moves into a new apartment building, he just knocks on their neighbor's door and says, "Can you hear me? Like if I'm doing this in my room, can you hear me?" Because noise can be so contentious amongst neighbors and actually be the source of conflict. There's a lot of self-motivated activity that came up in our discussions. For example, during COVID, there was one participant who shared that she made masks for people on our floor, would offer cleaning services to some of the elderly residents in her building, and a lot of reminiscing as well about programming that folks used to look forward to at community centers that were unfortunately shut down during the pandemic. And so I shared many of the challenges, but there are also so many stories where people wanted to see more community activity, and they wanted to bring some of those things back to life.
Okay, I just wanted to, I guess, make a comment that was sort of discussed already, but I think often when we think about placemaking, and I know this doesn't represent the way 880 Cities operates, but often communities think about building things and structures and putting them in place, and they really put a lot of thought into the design of these spaces. With the hope that it's really going to encourage interaction, that sort of thing. And I guess I just want to put a plug in for the idea of continuous placemaking. Once we build something, even if we put a great deal of thought into those places, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to always be used and even in the ways that we anticipate that they are going to be used. And so I think really what's important about engaging people in spaces is engaging in that sort of continuous placemaking. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very important to not just kind of create a space, but also think about like the long term, you know, how are we going to make sure that people are still feel connected to the space. So for the downtown, Activate Downtown Brampton project, it's actually still ongoing. So we are still continuously programming that space. It is also built off the success of that. We also did another project where we transformed a underused parking space into a pocket park as well. And it's just like, we're just putting pocket parks everywhere where we can do it. But yeah, it's not just like stopping at the design, but really focusing on how we can continue to bring people together and foster those connections. But
I think the work that both of you do is so incredibly important. And I think there might even be an opportunity to work collaboratively, and I don't know if your both organizations have worked together, because I think oftentimes, even when we do placemaking, you know, we know there's the chatty Cathys and the talkative Toms who will walk into any event or any structure and start connecting with other people. But I think it's the next, we talked about it yesterday when Eileen Davila was saying, how do we bottle up those people who feel comfortable reaching out and making that connection? And programming to me is start one, which is, hey, we've got all these activities, but how do we get more people to break down that facade or that barrier and just say, hi, Kim, how you doing? How's your day going? And I think the programming that I know Hey Neighbor Collective does in actually helping facilitate that connection becomes so critically important. So I wonder if there's even a great opportunity for collaboration in the work that both you guys do. So but both amazing pieces, and thanks for being here today.
thank you. Thank you.
I just have some wrap up because I think it's, sorry, I got lots to say.
I like sitting.
Pete knows that, that's why he put me up here. That what Robin brings is the importance of neighboring, and the saying is a first responder is not going to be your first responder, it's going to be your neighbor. So it really puts the importance on getting to know your neighbors and being safe to knock on doors. And you know what? Why don't we bring back boring a cup of sugar, knocking on each other's doors and boring a cup of sugar and making it safe to do so? And then the other idea is the placemaking. But as you leave here today, think about you as an individual and how are you as a human being going to connect. And then when you go to your office tomorrow, think about how are you going to listen with 2 eyes and 2 ears and support bringing the ideas from the community forward. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, because at a conference, I was at a session about 7 generations. And so I'd like to leave you with, and we have a baby in the back there. So look and turn towards the baby and say, how are you going to make a difference? So 7 generations from now, we are connected, we love each other, and it's okay to tap on someone's shoulder, which happened to me yesterday, and said, I really like the color of your blouse. Make that the norm. So thank you very much. Your research and your work is so, so important, and thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.